It was exactly 7:30 in the evening. I glanced down at my watch, suddenly aware of how quickly 5 years had passed. 5 years ago, to this very minute, I'd arrived here carrying 2 suitcases and holding a quiet hope of spending my golden years surrounded by family. My daughter, Rebecca, her husband Mark, and my 2 grandchildren, Tyler and Lily, were supposed to be my safe harbor, a loving circle I could lean on as I grew older. But sometimes life doesn't follow our plans. "Grandma, you're looking at your watch again," Tyler noted gently, his 13-year-old eyes warm with affection. He was the only one in this house who seemed to truly see me. Tyler had always been sensitive, quietly observing details others overlooked. "I trust it more than your gadgets," I replied with a small, playful smile. But Rebecca rolled her eyes sharply, a gesture I'd grown painfully familiar with. At 42, Rebecca reminded me of her teenage self, impatient, confident, dismissive. But now, her youthful arrogance had hardened into adult contempt. Beside her, Mark continued slicing the roast beef meticulously, his movements confident and detached. A successful physician, he radiated an air of superiority that silenced opposition. At work, Mark was admired. At home, his silence was louder than his words. "Mother, please," Rebecca sighed, her voice strained with irritation. "Can we not start this tonight? It's been a long day." "I didn't start anything," I said softly, reaching out for the salad bowl, just answering Tyler. Across the table, Lily, my 16-year-old granddaughter, barely looked up from her phone. Her black fingernails moved across the screen rapidly, texting beneath the dinner table, a silent rebellion I'd become accustomed to. "Lily," I gently reminded her, "why don't you put the phone down just for dinner?" The moment those words left my lips, Rebecca slammed her fork down. "Are you kidding me, Mom? Can you for once stop telling us how to raise our children?" I froze, feeling embarrassment spread through my chest. Tyler stared quietly at his plate, while Lily finally looked up, wide-eyed. "I was just suggesting," I started, but Rebecca cut me off sharply. "You're always just suggesting," she snapped, her voice rising with each word. "Every single dinner, every conversation. You never stop interfering. Can't you just be grateful we let you stay here?" My heart sank. I felt Mark's gaze settle on me, his eyes cold yet unsurprised. It felt as though he'd been waiting for this confrontation, maybe even planning for it. "Rebecca," Mark finally spoke, his tone clinical and detached, as though delivering bad news to a patient. "Your mother needs to realize the strain she's put on this family." "Strain?" My voice shook slightly, hurt evident. "I sold my house to be closer to you. I help cook, clean, take care of the kids." "Mom, you can't even vacuum properly," Rebecca interrupted, her voice bitter and mocking. I felt heat rush to my cheeks, humiliation thickening the air. At 72, I was being scolded like an irresponsible child, my dignity unraveling in front of the very people I'd sacrificed everything to be near. I stood frozen at the table, Rebecca's words echoing painfully in my mind. 5 years had passed since I moved into this house, but today felt like a harsh awakening, realizing the tiny humiliations I endured were not temporary moments of friction but symptoms of a deeper resentment that had been building all along. When I first arrived here, things were different. Rebecca had insisted warmly, "Mom, it'll be perfect. The kids need their grandmother close by. You'll never be alone again." Those early days had felt like a sweet reunion, with family dinners, weekend outings, and late-night talks with the grandchildren. Tyler and Lily would listen eagerly as I shared stories about their mother as a child, laughing at silly anecdotes from the past. But gradually, almost imperceptibly, things started to shift. It began with small, offhand comments from Rebecca about the way I did things, how I folded towels incorrectly, or sliced vegetables too thickly. At first, I shrugged it off as minor irritations, choosing to see them as harmless differences in household habits. Yet, those subtle criticisms slowly escalated. Mark began to sigh loudly whenever I spoke, rolling his eyes if I shared a memory or made a suggestion. His dismissive attitude soon spread to Lily, who, entering her teenage years, found it easier to side with her parents and withdraw from me entirely. Conversations turned brief and tense. My attempts at connection were increasingly met with indifference or irritation. One evening, about 2 years ago, I'd overheard Mark and Rebecca whispering sharply in their study. Standing quietly in the hall, I caught Mark's cold words clearly. "Your mother's become a liability. She's always poking around, asking questions." Rebecca's response had been equally sharp. "I know, Mark. I never thought she'd be this difficult." The words stung deeply. A liability. Difficult. I'd spent my entire life putting Rebecca first. As a single mother and a school teacher, every choice I made was to ensure she had a better future than my own. And yet, here I was, in my 70s, feeling unwanted and unwelcome in the home I'd helped create. Even as the emotional distance grew, I told myself daily that silence was strength. I convinced myself that enduring quietly was the noble thing to do, protecting the fragile bonds of family. I accepted their coldness as temporary, believing they would eventually recognize my value, that their hearts would soften once more. But tonight, standing humiliated at the dinner table, I finally saw my silent endurance clearly for what it was, not strength but submission. I had allowed their subtle cruelty to chip away at my dignity, accepting their mistreatment as something I deserved. As I glanced around the room, Rebecca's irritated expression, Mark's indifferent eyes, Lily's bored detachment, and Tyler's quiet sadness, I understood that my silence had never protected me or my family. It had only enabled them to treat me with increasing contempt, emboldening behaviors that hurt not only me, but the very foundation of our family bond. That night, as I climbed the stairs to my small room, each step felt heavier than the last. Rebecca's harsh words replayed in my mind, each syllable piercing my heart. But even more painful was the sudden, undeniable clarity I wasn't wanted here, perhaps never had been. My room, tucked away at the end of the hallway, had once felt like a cozy refuge. Now it seemed to shrink around me. I slowly opened the closet, pulling out the old suitcase I'd arrived with 5 years ago. As I folded clothes, memories of the past years flooded over me. Among them, there was one particular night 3 years ago that I'd long tried to bury, a night when I discovered something disturbing about Mark, something I wish I'd never known. It was late. Unable to sleep, I'd gone downstairs to make tea. Passing Mark's home office, I saw a dim light escaping through a half-open door. I paused, hearing his voice tense and low. "Look," he hissed into the phone, "we can't disclose those side effects yet. That data would derail the entire trial. The contract's worth millions, we simply can't risk it." I stood frozen in the hallway, holding my breath. Mark continued, "I don't care if some patients had complications. Keep it quiet. We'll revise the report, I'll handle it." My heart pounded fiercely. Mark respected, admired. Mark was falsifying medical research, manipulating data, putting innocent patients at risk for profit. 1,000 questions flooded my mind, but fear silenced me. Fear of losing my daughter, fear of breaking apart the family I'd sacrificed so much to join. Days later, by accident, I discovered papers Mark had carelessly left out, 2 versions of the same clinical report. One detailing significant side effects, another carefully edited, sanitized to seem harmless. My hands shook as I read through the documents, confirming my worst suspicions. I considered confronting Mark or Rebecca immediately, but my courage failed. The possibility of their anger, of losing my grandchildren forever, terrified me. Instead, I chose silence, desperately hoping they'd eventually see the gravity of their actions and stop before someone got hurt. But silence turned into complicity, a burden that grew heavier with each passing day. I felt trapped between loyalty to my family and my moral obligation to the innocent patients unknowingly at risk. Every family dinner, every passing glance from Mark, felt charged with guilt and shame, knowing what I knew but choosing to say nothing. Tonight, facing the brutal reality of Rebecca's rejection, something inside me shifted. My daughter, blinded by resentment, had cast me aside, and suddenly, I had nothing left to lose. My silence had gained me no love, no respect, only humiliation and isolation. A soft knock on my door pulled me back into the present. Tyler stood in the doorway, his eyes anxious and pleading. "Grandma," he whispered urgently, glancing nervously toward the staircase. "Are you really leaving?" I knelt down, gently taking his hand. "Sometimes, sweetheart, people need space. I'm just going to stay with my friend Helen for a while." His eyes filled with worry. "Is it because Mom yelled at you?" "No," I lied gently, smoothing his hair. "It's complicated, but you can call me anytime, okay?" Tyler nodded reluctantly, handing me a piece of paper. "Here's my number, Grandma. Promise you'll stay in touch." "Of course," I whispered, embracing him tightly. My heart ached, realizing the real price of this conflict would be paid by my grandchildren. But for the first time in years, standing in my small room, suitcase packed beside me, I knew I couldn't remain silent any longer. The truth demanded to be told. As I carefully closed the suitcase, the weight of my decision settled firmly on my shoulders. Downstairs, Mark and Rebecca waited, a silence thick with tension filling the house. Taking a deep breath, I carried my belongings down the staircase, my knees aching slightly, reminding me sharply of my age, and yet also of the inner strength I still possessed. Mark stood rigidly at the bottom of the stairs, his expression cold and unreadable. Rebecca, arms crossed defiantly, stared at me with a look I barely recognized, hard, detached, and bitterly resentful. "Mom," she began sharply, her voice brittle with barely contained anger, "you brought this on yourself. We've tried being patient, but clearly you don't respect our boundaries." I stopped mid-step, facing my daughter squarely, meeting her hardened gaze with quiet firmness. "Rebecca, the only boundary I've failed to respect is silence. Silence about things that matter deeply: honesty, integrity, people's lives." Rebecca flinched slightly, exchanging a quick glance with Mark, whose jaw tightened perceptibly. "What are you talking about?" she snapped, her voice wavering between anger and anxiety. "So you know exactly what I'm talking about," I replied calmly but firmly. "The clinical trials, the hidden side effects, the patients you've put at risk by falsifying those reports. I've stayed silent far too long, hoping you'd stop on your own." Mark stepped forward, his voice dangerously low. "You have no idea what you're talking about. Those accusations are ridiculous." "Are they?" I challenged, meeting his icy stare. "Then why does it frighten you so much that I speak up now?" Rebecca's anger turned quickly to panic, her eyes wide with shock. "Mom, don't you dare." But I shook my head gently, cutting her off. "Rebecca, you made your choice tonight. You asked me to leave, called me a burden. Well, I'm leaving, but I'm taking my silence with me." Tyler and Lily appeared quietly in the doorway, their faces stricken with confusion and worry. Lily's eyes were red-rimmed from crying, her usual teenage indifference stripped away, revealing the frightened child beneath. "Grandma," Lily whispered softly, stepping forward hesitantly, "what's going on?" Mark quickly raised a hand, signaling silence. "Kids, go back to your rooms. This doesn't concern you." "It absolutely does," I interjected sharply, unwilling to let him control the narrative any longer. "This affects everyone in this family. Truth always does." Tyler stepped closer, his voice trembling but determined. "Grandma, please don't go." "We'll fix this, right, Mom?" Rebecca turned sharply, glaring at him. "Tyler, go upstairs now." Tyler flinched at her harsh tone but stood his ground, eyes pleading. "Please, Mom." Rebecca's eyes filled with fury, masking her fear. "No more. This discussion is over." But as I reached the front door, pausing only to glance once more at my grandchildren's anguished faces, I felt a clarity I hadn't experienced in years. I had allowed fear to silence me, thinking it was loyalty, believing I was protecting the ones I loved. Now I understood clearly that true protection meant facing uncomfortable truths, even at great personal cost. Mark opened the door stiffly, setting my suitcase outside with exaggerated politeness. "Your cab will arrive shortly." Stepping out into the cool night, I turned to face them once more. "Mark, Rebecca Rizabinta's silence might seem safe, but it never protects anyone in the end." Standing on the sidewalk beneath the soft glow of streetlights, I watched as the cab pulled up quietly. Mark remained at the doorstep, his expression unreadable, his shoulders tense with suppressed anger. Behind him, Rebecca stared silently, her eyes filled with a mixture of fury and disbelief. As the driver helped me place my suitcase into the trunk, I felt an unexpected calmness. It was strange. Despite the harshness of the evening, the humiliation of being cast out, I felt a profound sense of relief. For the first time in years, I had spoken up, confronted the truth directly, and stepped free from the suffocating weight of silence. "Where to, ma'am?" asked the young driver gently, sensing my distress. "Helen Morgan's house, please," I replied softly, giving him the address. Helen had been my closest friend for decades, someone I could always rely on. Even now, after years of neglecting our friendship due to my family's restrictions, I knew she'd welcome me without hesitation. As the cab pulled away, I turned for one last glance at the home I'd spent the past 5 years in. Memories rushed past me: holidays, birthday parties, quiet evenings spent reading stories to Tyler and Lily. Yet woven into those moments were also feelings of isolation, criticism, and rejection, hidden beneath smiles and silences I once mistook for peace. My phone buzzed quietly. It was a text from Lily. "Grandma, please tell me you're okay. I'm so confused. Mom said terrible things. What's happening?" Tears welled in my eyes as I replied gently, "I'm safe, sweetheart. I'll explain everything soon. Just know I love you." Moments later, another message from Tyler appeared. "Grandma, is it true what Mom said? Are you really leaving forever?" My heart squeezed painfully. It hurt deeply that Rebecca had already begun spinning a narrative to alienate the kids from me. I answered calmly, "Never forever, honey. I'm always here for you, no matter what." Arriving at Helen's cozy Victorian home on Oak Street felt like stepping into another world, a sanctuary filled with warmth and genuine affection. As Helen opened the door, her face filled with compassionate understanding, I felt tears finally escape down my cheeks. "Come in, dear," she said softly, pulling me into a comforting embrace. "You're home now." Inside, as we sat sipping tea by the fireplace, I slowly revealed everything to Helen: the years of small humiliations, the tense dinners, the bitter accusations, and ultimately the shocking discovery about Mark's deception. Helen listened without judgment, nodding thoughtfully, her eyes gentle yet firm. "You did the right thing, Emma," she assured me, squeezing my hand gently. "Silence is the easiest choice, but rarely the right one. Your courage tonight wasn't just about standing up to Rebecca or Mark, it was about reclaiming your dignity." Looking around Helen's home, safe and free from judgment, I realized that tonight wasn't just about endings, but also about new beginnings. A new chapter where truth mattered more than comfort, where integrity outweighed false family loyalties, and where I could finally begin to heal. As I closed my eyes, exhausted yet resolute, I knew one thing for certain: I had finally taken my first steps into a future filled with honesty and self-respect. Waking up the next morning in Helen's guest room felt surreal. Sunlight gently filtered through the lace curtains, illuminating the unfamiliar surroundings. For a moment I lay still, absorbing the peace. It was the first morning in years that I didn't wake up anxious, dreading the cold tension at the breakfast table. Downstairs, I found Helen preparing coffee. She greeted me with a warm, knowing smile and handed me a steaming cup. "Sleep well, Emma?" "Better than I have in years," I admitted truthfully, feeling strangely light despite everything that had happened. As we sat together at her kitchen table, Helen leaned in gently. "Emma, I've been thinking about everything you told me last night. What Mark and Rebecca have done, it's serious. People's health could be at stake." I nodded quietly, the familiar anxiety returning momentarily. "I know. For years I justified my silence by thinking that confronting them would destroy our family. But keeping quiet, it made me complicit. It ate away at my conscience every day." Helen reached across the table, holding my hand firmly. "Well, now you've broken free. But your choice isn't over yet. You have to decide what's next." I sighed deeply. Part of me just wants peace, to let it go, start fresh. But I can't ignore the fact that innocent people could be harmed because of Mark's lies. The clinic trials he falsified are due to be approved soon. Helen nodded thoughtfully, her expression serious yet supportive. "You know, my nephew Jonathan is a medical ethics lawyer. I could call him, he'd give you solid advice about what steps you could take." I hesitated, then slowly nodded. The reality was, I couldn't ignore this issue any longer. My family might never forgive me, but the alternative, allowing innocent patients to suffer because of my silence, was a burden I couldn't carry anymore. Later that afternoon, Jonathan arrived, a quiet, calm man whose steady gaze inspired trust. After reviewing the copies of Mark's altered reports I had cautiously kept hidden for years, he looked up sharply. "Emma, this is extremely serious. These discrepancies indicate clear medical malpractice. If this drug goes public with falsified safety data, it could endanger countless lives. You have evidence of a crime." I felt my pulse quicken. What should I do? Jonathan took a slow breath. "First, we take this to the medical board. They'll start an investigation. It won't be easy, this might get public, and it'll definitely affect your family." I looked down, hands trembling slightly. But as I considered the path ahead, I realized this was exactly why I'd broken my silence, to protect those who had no voice. "I'll do whatever it takes," I replied steadily. "I can't undo the past, but I can stand for the truth now." Helen squeezed my shoulder reassuringly. "And I'll be right beside you every step of the way." At that moment, gratitude washed over me, mixed with sadness. I had lost the family life I dreamed of, but I had gained something equally precious: a true friend who stood by me unconditionally. Together, we would face whatever came next, empowered not by revenge, but by the courage and strength found only in genuine friendship and the conviction to do what was right. The following weeks passed in a whirlwind of intense scrutiny and emotional upheaval. Though with Jonathan's guidance, I presented my evidence to the Medical Ethics Board. Their initial shock quickly turned to urgency as they reviewed the details of Mark's falsified research. The moment the board formally opened their investigation, the delicate peace I'd managed shattered completely. Headlines flashed across local news: "Prominent doctor under investigation for clinical trial fraud." My phone buzzed incessantly with angry calls from Rebecca, desperate pleas from Tyler, and confused messages from Lily. Each interaction was deeply painful, yet I reminded myself continually of why I had done this. It was never about revenge, it was about saving lives. One evening, sitting quietly with Helen, my phone lit up again. Rebecca's name appeared on the screen. My stomach tightened as I answered. "Mom," her voice was shaking, filled with a mix of rage and fear. "Do you understand what you've done? Mark's career is over. Our family is falling apart." I paused, allowing myself a breath to steady my emotions. "Rebecca, I never wanted this outcome. But hiding dangerous truths doesn't protect a family, it destroys it from within." "How can you pretend this isn't personal?" she snapped bitterly. "This is your revenge for how we treated you." "No," I answered calmly, feeling a deep sadness. "This is about doing what's right, even when it's painful. Mark made his choices, and so did you. People could have been hurt by those choices. That matters more than protecting our family's image." Rebecca fell silent, her breathing ragged on the other end. Then, quietly, almost brokenly, she whispered, "Mom, you don't realize you've ruined everything." Before I could reply, the line went dead. I sat back, drained and heartbroken, the silence between us heavier than ever. Later that night, as news crews gathered outside Mark and Rebecca's house, Tyler messaged me, "Grandma, is Dad really going to jail?" My heart ached at the innocence in his question. Carefully choosing my words, I replied, "Honey, your dad made a serious mistake. Right now, we don't know everything, but I promise you, no matter what happens, I'm always here for you." I received no reply, just the painful knowledge that my grandson, caught between truth and loyalty to his parents, was suffering deeply. A few days later, the medical board formally suspended Mark's license. His clinic closed immediately. The pharmaceutical company he collaborated with distanced themselves swiftly, condemning his actions publicly. Lawsuits began mounting, and Mark faced severe penalties. Each evening, Helen stayed by my side, reminding me gently, "Emma, you didn't do this, Mark did. He chose to put reputation and profit above patient safety. All you did was stand up and refuse to be complicit." Her words gave me strength, even as my family unraveled. I knew my actions had been right, but the cost was painfully high. Yet, amidst this storm, a strange sense of peace grew inside me. After years of silence and submission, I had finally found my voice. It was battered, tired, and deeply saddened by the chaos around me, but it was clear, strong, and unwavering. In the face of loss, betrayal, and heartbreak, I stood resolute, embracing the one truth I had always known deep down. Integrity isn't easy, but it is always worth it. As weeks turned into months, I watched from a painful distance as Rebecca's family struggled with the fallout of Mark's dishonesty. Their carefully constructed facade had facaded, exposing the bitter reality beneath. Friends distanced themselves, social invitations ceased, and whispers followed them everywhere. Tyler and Lily suffered immensely. Tyler's texts became less frequent, and when he did message, his words were tinged with hurt and confusion. Lily withdrew further, her school performance plummeting, her once vibrant social life diminished to near silence. One chilly afternoon, I sat alone at Helen's kitchen table, my heart heavy, pondering if my decision had been truly worth this painful price. Just then, my phone vibrated softly. It was Lily calling, a rare event these days. My heart jumped as I quickly answered. "Grandma," her voice trembled slightly, hesitant and uncertain, "can we talk?" "Of course, sweetheart," I replied gently, my heart squeezing tight at her tone. There was a pause, and then she whispered quietly, "I miss you." The simplicity of those words undid me completely. Tears sprang to my eyes. "Oh, Lily, I miss you too, more than you know." She sighed softly, sounding exhausted beyond her years. "Everything is so awful here. Mom and Dad fight all the time, and Tyler is always angry. Grandma, was it really necessary?" Her question was heartbreakingly honest. Carefully choosing my words, I said, "Lily, sometimes doing the right thing hurts more than doing nothing. If I had stayed silent, innocent people could have suffered. Your parents made choices with consequences. And sometimes those consequences affect the ones we love most." "I don't know who to trust anymore," Lily whispered softly, her voice barely audible. "Trust yourself," I urged her gently. "Trust your heart and your sense of right and wrong. I'm here for you always, Lily, no matter what." "Mom says you betrayed us," Lily added hesitantly. "But I just can't believe you'd ever hurt us intentionally." A surge of relief flooded through me at her words. "I never wanted to hurt anyone, Lily. All I've ever wanted is for our family to be safe and honest." The call ended quietly, but the weight in my chest lifted just a bit. Lily's voice, vulnerable, sincere, and seeking truth, renewed my hope that somehow our relationship could endure, even through this storm. That evening, Helen placed a comforting hand on my shoulder. "Emma, the hardest part of integrity is the loneliness it sometimes brings. But integrity also has a unique way of attracting honesty in others. Give them time, they'll see the truth in your actions." I nodded slowly, comforted by her unwavering support. "I hope you're right, Helen. All I can do is stay true to myself, even when it hurts." Looking out at the twilight sky, I reflected quietly on the painful road I'd traveled. To cost had been steep, family ties strained nearly to breaking, reputations ruined, and painful isolation. Yet through it all, a quiet strength remained, steady and clear. My decision hadn't been easy, nor painless, but it was right. Integrity, I realized deeply, wasn't a path you choose for comfort or ease. It was a path chosen because it was the only one you could walk and still remain true to who you were. And that, I knew in my heart, was worth any price. Winter softened into a gentle spring, breathing warmth back into our small town. Life moved forward slowly, healing wounds with time, patience, and unexpected hope. One sunny afternoon, Tyler appeared unexpectedly at Helen's doorstep. Standing tall but visibly nervous, he held a small bouquet of daisies, my favorite flower. My heart nearly stopped as I welcomed him inside. "Grandma," he began quietly, his voice carrying maturity beyond his years, "I needed to see you." We settled onto the porch swing, overlooking Helen's blossoming garden. Tyler hesitated before finally speaking. "I've thought a lot about everything that's happened. At first I blamed you, but after watching Mom and Dad, I see things differently now." His eyes, clear and honest, searched mine for understanding. "You did something really hard because it was right. I don't know if I could have done the same." Emotion welled inside me, tears threatening to fall. "Tyler, integrity isn't easy. It's messy and painful, but choosing the right path even when it hurts is something I've always hoped you'd understand someday." He nodded thoughtfully, a faint smile breaking through his seriousness. "I get it now, Grandma, and I admire you for it." In that moment, the heaviness I'd carried for months finally lifted. Tyler's understanding felt like forgiveness, acceptance, and love wrapped into one precious gift. Days later, Lily joined Tyler on another visit, her cautious hesitation replaced by warmth and tentative hope. Over tea and Helen's famous oatmeal cookies, we rebuilt bridges slowly, carefully, and with genuineness. News eventually came about Rebecca and Mark. Their marriage, severely tested by scandal and dishonesty, fractured permanently. Mark faced significant legal consequences, and Rebecca moved forward, seeking counseling and slowly regaining her footing professionally. Though the wounds remained deep, the truth had forced both to confront themselves honestly, perhaps for the first time. One afternoon, a handwritten letter arrived in Rebecca's familiar script, brief yet impactful. "Mom, I can't pretend everything is okay. I'm angry, hurt, and still processing. But I see clearly now what you stood for, and I respect your courage, even if I'm not ready to forgive yet. Maybe someday we can talk again." The letter filled me with a bittersweet hope. True reconciliation would take time, patience, and deep healing, but the door was cracked open. That small opening felt like a quiet miracle. So as weeks turned into months, Helen's home became not just my refuge but a place of genuine joy and growth. Tyler and Lily visited regularly, sometimes staying weekends. Our conversations became deeper, more honest, laying foundations built on trust and mutual respect. One evening, gathered on the porch with Tyler and Lily laughing softly nearby, Helen gently remarked, "Emma, look around, look at the life you've built." Her words resonated deeply. Out of pain and chaos had emerged something stronger, a family grounded in truth and integrity. The journey had been difficult, but undeniably meaningful. Turning toward my grandchildren, now happier and more balanced, I understood profoundly, sometimes we must endure the darkness of truth before we can live fully in the light. To my audience watching now, remember that honesty and integrity, though difficult, always lead us toward genuine happiness. If this story touched your heart, please like, comment, and share your own experiences. Let's support each other in choosing courage over comfort every single day. Thank you for watching, and until next time, live your truth bravely. Thank you so much for joining me today. If this story resonated with you, I invite you to reflect on moments in your own life where honesty, integrity, or courage made a difference. Maybe you faced a similar situation, or perhaps you're in the middle of one right now. Remember, standing up for what's right is rarely easy, but it's always worthwhile. Share your experiences in the comments below. Your stories might inspire someone else who desperately needs strength today. Don't forget to like and share this video to help our community grow stronger together. Subscribe to our channel, The Art of Revenge, for more powerful, real-life stories that touch the heart and empower the soul. Until next time, stay strong, stay honest, and keep living your truth.